Rich Owens here from markmeldrum.com with a little bit of guidance for level 2 candidates heading towards the window in May. So you're heading to that final countdown just as level 1ers were last week. I mentioned some advice for level 1 last week. A couple of people asked in office hours about level 2 and what you should do and kind of how to approach it. It's the same basic approach in my book. I am still going to be fairly evangelical about quitting mock exams with 7 days to go. It's just how I feel. You don't want to tire yourself out. As I said, I don't want to repeat myself on that. That's all in the level 1 chat I gave last week. So do your final mock. Slightly different for level 2. Obviously, the exam looks fundamentally different at level 2. You have a lot more time to do the questions because there's a lot more to read. So exam technique is more important. It's a little bit too late now to be going into a whole diatribe about exam technique, but hopefully you've developed it. Debrief your exams properly, debrief your mock properly, and you should spot whether you've developed it or not. A full debrief, as always, involves looking at the right answers and the wrong answers, because some of these right answers you may have fluked, you may have got right for the wrong reasons. And obviously look at your wrong answers as well. Once you find out any of these that you actually should have got wrong and any you did get wrong, you have to ask why. This is an analyst's exam after all. So why did it go wrong? And there are obviously a lot of reasons. A big one clearly is a lack of understanding, a lack of knowledge, in which case that's where you go back to the source material in the last few days. And we talked about that in the level 1 window. That means going back, watching illustrations, walking through illustrations, hitting practice questions, and so on. These two, misreading and timing, these are more to do with your exam technique. And both kind of unforgivable. Misreading is going to happen. You cannot rule it out completely as a possibility on the day. We all make mistakes, but you can minimize the probability of it happening with good technique. Timing is unforgivable. You have to do a mock exam at least once to make sure you know how the timing is going to feel. Obviously, you know what your average time is per question. I wouldn't break it down that far. I'd break it down as far as an item set, a vignette. How long do I have per vignette? And know that as an average. I would then, if it's me, either attempt an item set, so attempt an entire item set, or not. I don't like to pick and choose. In level 1, it's a lot easier. You can just miss out a question, come back to it. I don't like doing a little bit of an item set, coming back to it later on. You have to read all of the information again. So get the whole thing done or leave the entire item set until the end. In terms of misreading, that happens most, I think, when you start jumping around. If you jump around too much, then you start to misread. You read the wrong statements, you miss out the least correct or the most correct, and so on. So don't jump around too much. Don't read things 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 times. Again, it's late for technique, but when you have an item set, my approach to these item sets is look at the questions first. It's only going to take you 10, 20 seconds to glance at all of the questions. Get a feel for what you're going to be asked so you know what you're reading. Then you read the item set. And you have scratch paper. On that scratch paper, you note the key paragraphs that you need. There's probably going to be an introductory paragraph telling us where everybody is and where they live and what their names are that you never need to read again. Then you'll get the 2 statements for question 1. Then you'll get the information for the evaluation in question 2. Then you'll get the different approach somebody else suggested for question 3 and so on. So as you go through, there's the info for question 1, there's question 2, there's question 3. Questions are not written to confuse you. They don't deliberately mix up the information. Now, in the old days when it was paper-based, great, you could highlight it all. Now you can't, obviously, it's on the screen. But you can still highlight, you can still note down on your scratch paper exactly where you need to be. Now you read one question fully, obviously start with question 1, and you go back to the paragraph. You know where the paragraph is, you're calm, you just read that section. You take that section, you apply it to that question. And in that way, you'll be a lot calmer. You will minimize your chance of misreading. You're not going to eliminate it, but you will minimize it. Timing-wise, as I say, I would do an entire item set or not. If you look at an item set in this, and this is the advantage of not reading everything first, just jumping straight to the questions. If you go to the question and it looks like a long calculation, there may be one or two long calculations in there, and you think, that's going to drag me down, I would rather leave that until the end. I do not leave item sets that I don't like until the end. There's no point in that. What does that achieve? But I leave those that are long, because then I do the shorter ones, I'm ahead of the clock, and if disaster strikes and I do completely mess up the timing, well, I've just got one or two long questions at the end, rather than every single question that I didn't like. So I know that's a little bit exam technique-y, and it's kind of late in the day for that, but this is how you debrief your mock and say, okay, what is the split? What is genuine lack of knowledge, and what was technique? Because if it is technique and there are other mocks out there you haven't done, I'm saying in the last 6 days, you don't want to tire yourself out by doing full dress rehearsal mocks. But if there are mocks you haven't completed, it might be worth, if your technique is horrible, using one or two item sets from those mocks to practice this technique. Get better at eliminating these problems. Now, if it's understanding and knowledge, then clearly you need to go back to the source material, but you don't have long. So maybe 3 days there, 6 days left, 5 days left, 4 days left. Pick your poison. As I said last week, go back to your marginal areas. Those that are complete write-offs, okay. That's going to prevent me getting from 100% and having to do a webinar for the CFA. So fine, I'll leave a couple. But those that are marginal that you're grasping onto, go back to the source material. Go back to our videos and walk through the examples. The videos do most of the examples in the underlying. Get your understanding that way and hit some questions. In that way, hopefully 2, 3, 4 marginal areas you'll pick up. Maybe one of those comes up as an item set on the day and there's 3 or 4 extra marks you've got. Could be crucial. Now, when time is running out and you've only got a couple of days left and you need to be calm, you need to get exam tuned, put down your calculator, put down your flashcards, stop the panic, and just be calm and look at the LOS. I say this specifically for level 2, because when you look at quant, when you look at derivatives, when you look at fixed income in level 2, there are so many numbers, so many formulas, it can look intimidating. And it can start to look like it's going to be a financial engineering exam. It isn't. There are not that many calculate LOS, so open up your learning ecosystem and just look at the LOS and see what you're being asked to do. Now, I'm not saying you do it in this much detail, but just to give you an idea, if you go through quant and glance at the LOS, there are about 60. Now, including their all keywords, some of the LOSs have a couple of keywords in there, but there are about 60 keywords in those LOSs. Of those 60, 5 are calculate. Now, 4 are evaluate, which might involve a little bit of calculation, but 5 calculate. It's not all calculate. The vast majority are describe. Describe, explain, interpret. So what you want to do is look at those LOSs and start to talk to yourself. Talk yourself through the LOS. Ask why when they say describe and explain. Explain begs the question why. Why is this working? Why have I taken the log lin? Why have I decided to do a logistic regression? Why did my AR1 model not work? And just do it very calmly. You've only got a few days left. You are not at this point trying to learn new material and suddenly pick up topics that you just couldn't do. Take the pressure off. You're just going through very relaxed, asking yourself these questions and saying, oh, I don't actually know. Let me check. Okay, I can see the explanation. I've picked that up. Hopefully in that way, you're going to pick up 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 things, who knows, over those 2 days very calmly and be able to describe and explain rather than pounding your calculator to try and derive these 58,000 formulas. Last day, mentioned this last week. I don't like to do a huge amount on the last day, but the ethics applications examples are good to look through. There are some case studies in level 2. I'm thinking particularly in FSA when you look at the banks, insurance companies, things like that. They're nice case studies to walk through in a very calm way on the last day and just say, oh, can I get what's going on here? They don't want you in the exam to pull apart an entire set of accounts from an insurance company. It's just not possible. but they do want you to understand what these ratios are telling you, what these ratios are likely to look like in a soft market and so on. So you just read that and think, okay, yeah, that makes sense. So hopefully useful. Again, same caveat as last week. This may work for you, may not, but it's just from years of teaching review courses and seeing people in a fraught mental state with a few days to go and kind of how they waste those few days panicking through calculations, trying to learn everything, trying to just swallow the entire curriculum. This, I think, is a better way to go. Have realistic goals on what you can achieve in those last few days and just be happy if you can pick up 10, 15 extra things that you didn't know.